An ancient Hawaiian burial ground disturbed, and a family in Nanakuli pays the price with relentless night marcher encounters. The western coast of Oahu stretches out in a ribbon of volcanic rock and coral sand, where the Waianae Mountains rise sharply from the Pacific and cast long shadows across the community of Nanakuli. This is land where ancient Hawaiian traditions run deeper than the tourist industry acknowledges, where the old gods and spirits still command respect, and where certain places remain kapu, forbidden, for reasons the modern world has chosen to forget. In 1989, the Kalani family moves into a modest single-story home on Hakimo Road, unaware that their property sits adjacent to land that once served as a burial site for Hawaiian warriors, and that they are about to become unwilling witnesses to one of the most documented cases of night marcher phenomena in contemporary Hawaiian history. Thomas Kalani, a construction foreman, purchases the property with his wife Michelle and their 3 children, 2 daughters aged 12 and 9, and a son aged 7, seeking a quieter life away from the congestion of Honolulu. The house itself appears unremarkable, a typical plantation-style structure with a covered lanai and a yard bordered by plumeria trees. The neighbors welcome them warmly but offer vague warnings about respecting the land, about not disturbing certain areas of the property, particularly the northeastern corner where a cluster of pohaku, sacred stones, rest partially buried in the red earth. Thomas, raised in California and only partially connected to his Hawaiian heritage, dismisses these cautions as superstition. Michelle, who grew up on the mainland entirely, finds the warnings quaint and outdated. The first incident occurs on a Thursday night in late September, 3 weeks after the family settles in. Michelle wakes at approximately 2:30 in the morning to the sound of distant drumming, a deep, rhythmic pounding that seems to emanate from the mountains behind their home. She rises and moves to the bedroom window, pulling back the curtain to peer into the darkness. What she observes makes her breath catch in her throat. A procession of lights moves along the ridgeline above their property, dozens of torches carried by figures she cannot quite distinguish, accompanied by the steady beat of drums and the low chanting of voices speaking in a language she does not understand. The procession moves with purpose and authority, descending from the heights toward the valley below. Michelle watches for nearly 10 minutes before the lights disappear beyond a grove of kukui trees. She wakes Thomas, but by the time he reaches the window, the phenomenon has passed. The following morning, Michelle mentions the incident to their neighbor, an elderly Hawaiian woman named Auntie Mahilani, who lives in the adjacent property. The old woman's expression shifts immediately from friendly to grave. She explains that what Michelle witnessed was a huakai po, a procession of night marchers, the spirits of ancient Hawaiian warriors who traverse their traditional paths during the darkest hours. Auntie Mahilani asks if Michelle looked directly at the marchers, if she made any sound or gesture toward them. Michelle confirms she remained silent and still. The old woman nods with relief, then asks a more pointed question. Has anyone in the family disturbed the pohaku in the northeastern corner? Thomas, who joined the conversation, admits that he cleared brush from that area over the weekend and moved several large stones to create space for a storage shed he plans to build. Auntie Mahilani's face drains of color. She insists that Thomas must return the stones immediately, must make offerings of tea leaves and salt, must ask forgiveness from the Aumakua, the ancestral spirits who guard that space. Thomas, uncomfortable with what he perceives as superstitious ritual, politely declines. He assures the old woman that they intend no disrespect, but that they need the storage space. Auntie Mahilani leaves shaking her head, murmuring prayers under her breath. The escalation begins that same night. All 5 family members wake simultaneously at 2:15 in the morning to the sound of drums, much closer now, accompanied by the deep resonance of conch shell trumpets and voices chanting in ancient Hawaiian. The windows rattle in their frames, the walls seem to vibrate with the percussion. Thomas rushes outside onto the lanai and freezes. The procession moves directly through their property, no more than 30 yards from the house. He counts at least 40 figures, tall and imposing, carrying torches that burn with an unnatural golden flame. They wear traditional battle garb, capes and helmets adorned with what appears to be feathers, their faces painted or tattooed in fierce patterns. Some carry long spears. Others bear standards decorated with symbols Thomas does not recognize. The air grows thick and heavy, charged with an energy that makes his skin prickle and his heart race. Thomas recalls Auntie Mahilani's warnings about observing the night marches. Traditional protocol demands that witnesses lie face down on the ground, avoiding eye contact, showing absolute submission. But Thomas stands frozen, unable to move, unable to look away. One of the figures at the head of the procession turns its head toward him. The eyes that meet his glow with an inner light, not quite human, filled with ancient authority and unmistakable warning. The figure raises a hand, pointing directly at Thomas, and speaks a single word in Hawaiian that Thomas somehow understands despite never learning the language. Hallel, leave. The procession continues past the house, moving toward the northeastern corner where Thomas disturbed the pohaku. The marchers encircle the area, their chanting rising to a crescendo, and then, as suddenly as they appeared, they vanish. The torches extinguish. The drums fall silent. Only the sound of Thomas's own labored breathing and the distant crash of waves against the shore remain. Inside the house, Michelle and the children huddle together in the master bedroom, terrified by what they have heard and partially glimpsed through the windows. The youngest child, their son, has developed a high fever that seems to have no medical source. The eldest daughter complains of pressure on her chest, difficulty breathing, as though something heavy sits upon her. No one in the family sleeps for the remainder of the night. The following morning, Thomas contacts Auntie Mahilani and asks her to help them. The old woman agrees, but insists that what needs to be done requires someone with greater spiritual authority. She arranges for Kahu Kamaka, a respected Hawaiian kahuna, a priest and spiritual practitioner, to visit the property. Kahu Kamaka arrives that afternoon, a man in his 60s with silver hair and weathered hands, carrying a woven basket containing tea leaves, sea salt, coral, and other traditional offerings. Kahu Kamaka walks the property slowly, pausing frequently, his eyes closed in concentration. When he reaches the northeastern corner, he kneels and places his hands on the disturbed earth. He remains there for several minutes in silent communion with whatever presence resides in that space. Finally, he rises and turns to face Thomas and Michelle. His diagnosis comes without preamble. The land beneath their home forms part of an ancient pathway used by night marchers for centuries, and the pohaku Thomas moved served as markers and guardians for iwi, ancestral bones, buried beneath the ground. By disturbing the stones, Thomas has shown profound disrespect to the alii, the chiefs and warriors, whose remains rest there, and has opened his family to their displeasure. The resolution Kahu Kamaka proposes involves several steps. First, Thomas must restore every stone to its original position, working in daylight and speaking prayers of apology in Hawaiian as he does so. Second, the family must participate in a ho'oponopono, a traditional Hawaiian practice of reconciliation and forgiveness, conducted by Kahu Kamaka on the property at sunset. Third, they must commit to maintaining the northeastern corner as kapu, never building there, never altering it, and placing regular offerings of tea leaves at the site each full moon. Finally, if the night marchers appear again, every member of the family must immediately lie face down on the ground or floor, close their eyes, and remain motionless until the procession passes. Thomas agrees to all conditions. Over the next 2 days, he carefully returns each stone to where he removed it, speaking the Hawaiian phrases Kahu Kamaka taught him, asking forgiveness from the ancestors whose rest he disturbed. On the third evening, as the sun descends behind the Waianae Mountains and paints the sky in shades of crimson and gold, the family gathers with Kahu Kamaka, Auntie Mahilani, and several other Hawaiian elders in their yard. The ceremony lasts nearly 2 hours, involving chanting, prayer, the burning of sage and male leaves, and the sprinkling of salt water blessed, according to ancient tradition. Kahu Kamaka speaks directly to the ancestors, explaining that the Kalani family acted from ignorance rather than malice, that they now understand the sacredness of the land, and that they pledge to serve as guardians rather than violators of this space. The night marchers appear one final time, exactly 1 week after the ceremony. The family wakes to the familiar sound of drums and conch shells, but this time they follow Kahu Kamaka's instructions precisely. All 5 members lie face down on the floor of their bedrooms, eyes closed, barely breathing. The procession moves through the property again, but the energy feels different, less threatening, more observational. The chanting carries a tone that sounds almost approving. After 15 minutes, the sounds fade into silence. When the family finally rises and looks outside, they find a single perfect kukui nut placed on the lanai railing, a sign that the ancestors have accepted their apology and recognized their commitment. The Kalani family continues to live on Hakimo Road for another 12 years. They maintain the northeastern corner as promised, never building there, placing tea leaves at the pohaku during every full moon. Thomas becomes deeply involved in learning Hawaiian language and culture, eventually serving as a cultural advisor for construction projects across Oahu to ensure that development does not disturb sacred sites. Michelle works with Auntie Mahilani and other elders to document traditional stories and practices, helping to preserve knowledge that modern Hawaii risks losing. Their children grow up with a profound respect for the land and the ancestors, understanding that some boundaries exist for reasons that transcend contemporary convenience. The case of the Kalani family becomes one of the most thoroughly documented instances of night marcher phenomena in Hawaiian paranormal records. Kahu Kamaka discusses it in interviews with researchers studying indigenous spiritual practices. The University of Hawaii's Hawaiian Studies Department includes references to the case in courses examining the intersection of traditional belief systems and modern life. For those who study such matters, the Kalani case demonstrates several crucial principles: that certain lands retain spiritual significance regardless of legal ownership, that ancestral spirits maintain presence and agency in locations sacred to them, and that respect for indigenous traditions offers not merely cultural sensitivity, but practical protection from forces that Western rationalism cannot explain or control. The night marchers continue their ancient processions through the valleys and ridgelines of Oahu, following paths established long before European contact, before statehood, before the word Hawaii appeared on any American map. They move through a landscape transformed by centuries of change, yet they remain constant, eternal guardians of a culture and a people whose connection to the land runs deeper than any deed or title can express. Those who live in these areas and understand the old ways know to recognize the signs, the distant drums, the sudden hush that falls over the night birds, the feeling of pressure in the air, and they know to show respect. Because some paths belong not to the living, but to those who walked them first, and some stones mark boundaries that no amount of modern progress should cross. The Kalani family learned this truth the hard way, but they learned it nonetheless, and in learning it, they became not victims of supernatural malevolence, but participants in a tradition of stewardship that honors both past and present. Their story serves as a reminder that the world contains mysteries and powers that demand recognition, that the line between the seen and unseen remains permeable, and that the price of disrespect can be steep. But the rewards of understanding and honoring ancient wisdom can transform ignorance into knowledge, fear into reverence, and alienation into belonging. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.